Well, welcome, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to Future Friday on RPG with DBJ. Today, Future Friday, we talk all things tabletop role playing games when it comes to transhumanist theories, especially concerning the games Eclipse Phase, Altered Carbon, the Expanse, and a ton of others out there in our various worlds. Now, today, the title of this episode here on Future Friday, the title is Personal Conflict. Now, most of the time when you hear the word personal and conflict, we tend to have our own definitions of what it is, but we are here to deep dive into into what seemingly on the surface seems like a very simple thing, but becomes pretty complex and actually kind of cool things we could pull from when it comes to transhumanist tabletop role-playing games. Um, yes, the idea here amongst this illustrious group of role-playing games, especially Eclipse Phase and Altered Carbon, is that we will be touching upon a little bit of shall we say, is one game better than another? A little bit of an Eclipse, a friendly conflict between Eclipse Phase and Altered Carbon, the intellectual property. So first, let's get some definitions out the way, okay? Because we should be on the same page when we are talking about these things. So, what is personal? Pretty simple definition here. If you do a couple of keystrokes, personal is of affecting or belonging to a particular person rather than anyone else. Of affecting or belonging to a particular person rather than to anyone else, or of or concerning one's private life, relationships, and emotions rather than matters connected with one's public or professional career. So we're really going to draw on that today in this hour. And then conflict. Four types of conflict. I didn't know there were four types of conflict, so I tend to learn something new every day. The conflict within the story generally comes in four basic types: conflict with the self, conflict with others, conflict with the environment, and conflict with the supernatural. Conflict with the self, the internal battle a lead character has within, is often the most powerful, especially when storytelling. All right, well, I say all these things, but what does that have to do with like science and futurism and tabletop games? Well, the point is that many of these games are pretty easy to run as a run and gun, right? Bunch of characters, special forces, heavy weapons, bug hunting, doing a lot of sabotage, throwing explosives, and basically, running, jumping, killing, blasting their way through some evils out there in the world. Especially poignant when playing a game like Eclipse Phase, where you often one of the basis is that you play a firewall agent and you're fighting existential threats, and a lot of those existential threats come in either an AI form, whether it's an AI controlling a factory spewing out robots, or maybe there's an alien virus and it's mutating and growing into some Lovecraftian horror out there in the wild. And there's nothing wrong with playing a game like that, especially hanging out in zero G, just moving through some abandoned habitat floating out there in the void, and there's nothing wrong with running a game like that. But if we go for the other side of this coin, whereas Eclipse Phase, very much like Dungeons and Dragons, is a setting, it's an environment, it is an open world, and then we layer upon that world what it is that we want to encounter, whether it's and the themes that we want to run. It could be humor, it could be mystery, horror, heist, any of those things, even war, espionage, that kind of thing. And I found that a number of you who may be just tuning into what a game like Eclipse Phase is, a lot of writing I think is an excellent balance of giving you enough information about the solar system to make it its own setting, and then leaving enough open space for you to assume what you want. As a matter of fact, the the voice of many of the entries in each of the chapters in Eclipse Phase is specifically taken from the point of view of one particular faction or individual whose opinions may or may not be true. So, despite the fact that you could read through a book like Eclipse Phase and consider everything in the book as canon, technically it's written through the point of view of of usually one individual or one individual part of a faction who's gathered information that may or may not be colored by their own experiences and motivations, which I think is a really good. It's a literary trick that's really good because the narrator might be unreliable, and therefore what's canon may not necessarily be canon within your game versus anyone else's. Of course, time goes by as well. But let's move over to Altered Carbon. And now, Altered Carbon, I know I came across this through the visual medium. I came across this through the Netflix series. And a number of you have already or have found the books. And of course, everyone, don't tell me that the books are better than the show, because they always are. Most scripts are very few pages compared to books in which you can have whole chapters which are internal monologues. You can't do that in a visual medium. So, whatever. We're not here to argue the merits of one or the other. It's just that either you're reading the books or you're seeing the visual medium, and it is hyper personal. And so where do we fall on this spectrum of generalized, hey, here's a setting and you place your characters in that setting, or making it so hyper personal that literally the world is only motivated by the actions and reactions of the main characters. Now, one thing that I feel that sometimes is missing, not just in the visual medium, but in books as well, is that writers will more often than not fall back on using the main character, the protagonist, to move the story along. And in role-playing games, sometimes it can be very easy for us world creators to create a world and have very little space for the player characters to influence the world, to have things float around them. And just as if you want to do fantasy gaming as well as science fiction gaming, modern day gaming, or anything, I think it behooves us to make sure that things are very personal for the characters. Yes, Dead Man on Twitch says yes. TV shows are usually knockoffs of the books. Yeah, yes, I kind of just said that. The idea here is that when someone creates a story that does not involve randomizers like dice, it doesn't involve other people collectively getting together in a improv kind of method. A writer can create any story they want, and so of course their main characters can perform acts and do things that motivate them on an extremely personal level. Instead of having an enemy, that enemy literally is someone's relative, or instead of needing to go into a city to find a connection, the PC has is friends with the most incredible agent in the city at all, because that's what the writer gives them. So, what kind of middle ground can we pull from this? Well, hey there, Harry. Yeah, with a flashback and good morning. Flashbacks are pretty important there, Harry. There on YouTube. Yeah, good morning, Vietnam. Yeah. So, personal conflict. Well, one very easy way to do this is, of course, the default answer to 99.9% of all the information out there amongst talking heads that concern themselves with tabletop RPGs, and that's talk with your players. The player's responsibility is give your GM some things to work with. If you start to make your background, specifically write into your background personal connections for your character and leave space open. You know, the main character in Altered Carbon, Takashi Kovacs or Kovash, or however any various people have pronounced it, including the people in television show. Takashi has a sister in the show, and while you follow, yes, spoiler alert, whatever. There is a big spoiler here. Takashi and his sister end up going on about their lives, and they get separated by upwards of 250 years or more, concerning the first season of the television show. And he loses track of her. And Takashi goes on to become basically a snowflake character, right? He becomes the best. He joins the Protectorate, becomes one of the best Protectorate agents, leaves the Protectorate, becomes an envoy, becomes not only one of the best, becomes the last envoy, and he ends up getting re-sleeved. His cortical stack ends up getting, or you get the impression that he's been re-sleeved over and over and over again as this highly trained agent, agent of like chaos, okay? But over the 250 years after he gets spun up into yet another body with combat mods and things, you find out that a number of the individuals in his background, yes, hyper spoiler alert for the first season, that his sister has been following him. And here is one of the really cool things where we get into transhumanism, where we get to take the personal and the conflict and really flip it on its head. Oh, Harry, yeah, you like me, a Grognardian Luddite like yourself. Finally got to join Discord. Yeah, I'm I'm there too. Yeah, yeah. Christy's like, join Discord, you old fart, and I'm like, yeah, she might be talking to me. Now, the idea behind personal. Let's get into personal in Eclipse phase. Now, a lot of personal things. I mean, Eclipse phase and Altered Carbon. Normally, when we think about personal things, are enemies that we have a face to attach to. Let's say a rival, the classic enemy that has killed my loved ones, and I intend on taking revenge. Maybe a fellow soldier who turned their back on the squad and left everyone to die in some kind of suicide mission. A Maybe someone you owe a debt to. Maybe that debt is one paid in loyalty and service, or maybe in money, or maybe even threats are given to someone's family or friends. Personal connections with family, or maybe there is a particular relationship that someone wants to have. And in when you start talking about re-sleeving and cortical stacks, this can get a little bit complicated, right? Because I hear you, Harry. Because you never know who it is behind the face that you're looking at, or what personality is sitting there behind the face that you are also looking at. An example would be, let's say your character, let's talk about Eclipse phase, and your character has flashbacks of having left Earth, and your cortical stack was on ice for dozens of years, and finally, someone along the way decided to sleeve you into maybe a mechanical morph, some kind of synth morph or whatever, for use in one of the I don't know, corporate habitats or whatever, and maybe by accident or on purpose, you were freed, or you purchased yourself out of your indentured servitude, or maybe you were just caught up in some one of the random rebellions, or union acts or something that happened on some far off habitat, and now you're free. And then suddenly, just out of the corner of your eye, walking around on some habitat on orbiting around inside of Saturn's rings, you see your loved one far away in a crowd. You see their face, you see the way they walk, you something familiar about the way that they brush their hair away from their face, or the way they flick a stylus through their fingers over and over again or something. And you go up to them and you get to speak to them, and they look at you and you look at them and they look at you and they're like, can I help you? Knowing that they don't know who you are. And then you look at them and you hear their voice, and after a few words you realize that's not the person I know, but there's something, but that's their body, that's their face. Maybe, just maybe, the person you recognize isn't in there. It could be someone else's cortical stack. Their memories could have been edited. It is the person that you really love. Are they on ice somewhere? Does this person that's inside of their body know where they're at? Do they have any connection to them? And then if this really is their body, how did it get out way out to Saturn? Like, what purpose is there? There's a whole lot that can open up in a transhuman personal relationship that you can't do in, say, a modern day setting, or well, you could do it in a fantasy setting if you if you want to really go wild with it. But these are some really cool personal things that you can deal with. Now, going back to Altered Carbon, Takashi, one of the most badass individuals in the entire solar system and beyond, ends up getting kind of duped by his own sister, who happened to be riding any number of bodies and or genders getting re-sleeved in them, because over the past 250 years she's been building up a bit of a legacy for herself, getting a ton of skills, becoming a badass herself. And of course, since you can re-sleeve into different bodies, our own, even Takashi himself, despite an individual who knows that the body and the mind are two completely different things, doesn't realize that his own sister, in any number of different genders and or racial types and in different social strata, is the exact same individual that's been following him around this entire time. Yep. So in many ways, there is in the Eclipse phase system, second edition, there is a life path system. Harry brings up the a fantasy system that he created, and had 10 boxes that was called life path. And there are some games that do life path systems, but even if you don't want to randomly roll, because some people like myself, I love random tables, I just never roll on them, but I like reading them. And if you follow Adam Coble, one of the designers of Dungeon World, and he's a full-time gamer, dungeon master, whatever. If you follow him, he always says that random tables are setting, right? And so if you decide to use the Eclipse phase life path system, it'll give you a ton of really weird and bizarre and mix and match things that you can add to your character. And I would suggest using some of the really bizarre ones, right? Like, I don't know, your player character was in the military and you were a pilot for an AI tank system, and you stole the AI system out of the tank, and it started getting its own personality, and now you're in search for, I don't know, a biomorph body to stick it inside of, because for some strange reason you went to hell and back with this computer AI battle system that you now have a relationship with or something. Yeah, Harry. See, Harry, you're showing your age and mine. Oh, central casting. I have two central casting books, and I remember reading four of them. Um, for y'all youngins out there, back in the, I'm gonna say, late '80s. Somebody out there, Dead Man or Tesla, could look this up on Wikipedia, but there was a whole book literally just for rolling up random backgrounds and setting material, and each central casting book was based on a particular setting. There was superhero modern day. There was a fantasy one. There was also a sci-fi central casting book as well. So yeah, those were some fun things. Now, in creating a background, right? One of the problems again is that just like a game master that designs a world where there's no space for the PCs to manipulate it, player characters too have to really watch out for making a background that is immutable. And when it comes to transhuman games where you have a cortical stack and your brain can literally be is on a computerized chip that can be removed and put into another synthetic body or biological body or a clone or copied, that we try to leave space for the unknown in ways that you cannot have the unknown in any other game. I The previous Future Friday, we talked about the idea that your brain has the ability to be edited and deleted, and that maybe even your own memories of your own past may not be true. So leave some spaces. For example, if you have if you were a soldier in a battle, leave some space open for the idea that sure, you may remember things that happened in one particular manner, but maybe things didn't happen that way. You're misremembering them, or maybe those elements were deleted, so that when, say, a fellow soldier or a commander or someone who was on the opposing side of that battle or an innocent bystander that was injured during that time, leave some space open for the game master to say, "Hey, sure, you may have remembered that the soldier was your best friend, but maybe they weren't, or enough time has passed where." Sure, you remember it one way, but this individual remembers it in a different way, or maybe you perform some kind of act that, although you remember the relationship being in one form, it was manipulated to be seen in another form. Yeah, and Deadman puts into the Discord server the random character generator from charactergenerator.org.uk/bio, or click, I guess you could call slash a click. I have to anybody refer to it as a click, even though periods are dots. It's just an aside. Anyway, squirrel. So the another thing when it comes to making things personal, a very easy method for game masters to make something personal for a player character is when you start making a list of adversaries, NPCs, from the most minor thugs all the way up to the big bads who have all the skills and all the technology and all the money and resources. Give Just have them call out one or more of the player characters in a very personal manner. Hey, I remember you from, or you owe me something from, or mom always said that we were, you know, or remember that time when you did a thing to me where I'm coming to take my revenge on you, that kind of thing, right? Just a few lines of that, and if you've got a really good group of players who are already have already bought into transhumanist playing, they'll go along with it, right? One of my best friends was notorious for this. I ran a game where I had no idea what I was going to do, so I started out with simple bandits on the road, and immediately as a player, he just threw in, having seen Empire Strikes Back and stuff, is he does a Han Solo, like, hey, I know I owe you some money. Well, New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. But he's like, I know I owe you some money, and hey, why don't you guys follow along with me, and I'll get you paid, right? And this had nothing to do with the story, but it was inserted. So Dead Man puts in. There's also the book of random tables for Amazon on purchasable on Amazon. Yeah. By the way, this show is simulcast on three platforms, an hour a day, every day, including this future Friday on YouTube, Discord, and Twitch. So if you would like to listen in or participate in those manners or any number of those combinations, you may do so freely. Just be aware that while I love the interactions, I may or may not be able to get to any and every interaction thereof. But please, if you wish, you can talk amongst yourselves. No limitations thereof. Now, making things personal, we can also, if the player, as you yourself as a player character, open up the idea that, hey, listen, Game Master, here are 3 NPCs in my past. Feel free to take them, move them, reskin them, reflavor them. This may be how I perceive them, but their ability to perceive me, here's a way for you to just take it and change it and flick it around. Now, as the little scenario that I brought up, yeah, I hear you, Jack. Now, one of the things that is possible in transhumanists, as I brought up with the very early scenario, is that an NPC, just as the PC, is made up of both a mind, the ego, your cortical stack, and the body. And there's no limitation on that as well, right? So, oh, got a bot. Thank you, bot. If you ever become a sentient, I'm glad you could join in here, Russian bot. Anyway, there is this possibility that the person you see, the body you see, may be someone very familiar. Maybe that familiarity is done by accident, a random chance, a random possibility that you ran into someone that you remembered from long ago that's super reminds you of maybe a traumatic event, or you have this desire or hate or jealousy, envy, love, care, guilt over this individual, and that may be the thing that draws you to them on a very physical level. Thank you, Dead Man. Slate the AI. Exurgent virus poking out its head. Yeah. Then also there's also the idea that the mind itself may be something. So a player character may come across a random a rando NPC, but maybe that NPC starts displaying habits of someone that is extremely pivotal in that player character's background. Now, when and how does this happen? It could be motivated by the game master. This person has a habit of smoking in a world where people don't smoke, but maybe they have the somatic habit of doing the thing. Maybe they have a twitch, or they wear a particular color, whether they're a biomorph or a synthmorph. They always wear a red scarf around their neck, or they are always seen in a park reading an old style paperback book. Maybe there's a habit that they have that the player character recalls, and despite the fact that they've seen 3 different NPCs on 3 different worlds, they may have the same habits. Now, again, in a transhumanist world, there's nothing stopping, say, a loved one's mind from being copied and spread around the universe, or having a loved one's let's go away from a loved one. Let's say there is a colleague that was in a major battle, and the PCs have been separated for the last 70 years, and now they happen to see them in 3 different I've seen you in 3 different locations around Jupiter, Mars, and Venus. Maybe their brain has been copied. Maybe they forked themselves to be in these locations. Maybe they're a hive mind, or a corporation has hired them because they're an excellent soldier, just like one of the PCs, and is using and or abusing their mind to copy them and use them as like a hive mind hit squad or something. You can go really far in transhumanist to make things personal. Now, we're talking, all of this that I'm saying is extremely narrative. Okay. Any player worth their salt and any game master who really wants to dive into using and manipulating what it means to live in a transhuman world will allow the players to insert elements that otherwise would not be seen. For example, some rando NPC is found on a habitat. Players go into the local, what the equivalent of a local tavern, and then a PC says, "You know what? This person reminds me of someone from my past." Now, maybe the game master hadn't really thought about making this NPC someone from their past. Didn't even give them a name yet. No backstory. Just, what do you have there, buddy? And goes to, pour out some synth alcohol or something, and then the PC says, "This person reminds me of their past." Boom, just go with it. It's a yes and, right? Yes and maybe you intended for this bartender to hand out some personal information. Okay, then yes and this person reminds them of someone from their past. It could be maybe they don't remember it, or maybe the bartender just does not recognize the PC, or maybe the bartender does recognize the PC but is afraid to say or do anything for fear of some kind of reprisal, or maybe they're in hiding, so on and so forth. Now, when we talk about these kind of things, there's some other personal element to this as well, and that is the player character themselves. There's nothing stopping this from being a part of the game in which the player character could literally be a fork of themselves. They could be the copy instead of the player character making a copy of themselves. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Yeah, Harry's like central casting. Yeah, I remember really those central casting tables. Yep. Oh, yes, Tesla, the sixth day. Exactly. I know it's a Schwarzenegger movie, but if you look past that, the movie The Sixth Day, if you pull concepts out of there, the main character's running around the movie thinking that there is some nefarious thing going on, but when you find out that the main character is the copy and the true person is the original, although the difference between what a copy is and an original, it's it's not just a blurred line. It almost doesn't even matter anymore. Now, I do understand in the Eclipse phase rules, you can make a beta. I guess it's beta and what's below beta. It's either like gamma or delta within the rules. You can make an emulated mind of yourself that only has a portion of your psychology specifically tied to that particular act. But when it comes to storytelling, you don't have to listen to those rules at all, right? An example would be it's the comedy version of this. We've seen this in a movie where someone's like, "I wish I had enough time to do all my work and have fun, so I'm going to clone myself." One clone's going to be the hard worker, and the other clone's going to be the party guy, right? So in Eclipse phase, you can make a fork of yourself whose only purpose is to do work and doesn't have the rest of the personality of the main PC, but maybe the player character doesn't remember doing it, and they come in contact with themselves, and their other self has already established their own lifestyle and learned other things. They don't know. Yeah. Deadman says the Eclipse Phase one-shot game, Ego Hunter, yep, is about a Titanian autonomous university professor who fork themselves several times to do multiple things at once. And 3 to 6 players play as forks of the same person. And I love that idea where literally there's 3 to 6 player characters who are like fragments of one individual, which makes you think, if you have 3 to 6 player characters and they all make their character, right? And maybe not even knowing that they are fragments of each other. How badass is the main personality if they've got all the traits and secrets and capabilities of 3 to 6 other player characters as forks, right? And of course, a player character's personal connection to themselves can kind of cause some kind of dissonance, when you see yourself doing a thing and yourself meets yourself and yourself is just like looks at you up and down and like, I don't like you. Like, why are you still in existence? I thought I deleted you. And the player character's like, deleted me? You're the one that needs deletion. I'm not the bad guy. Now, of course, in the Altered Carbon universe, it is illegal to have copies of yourself. It's illegal to twin your cortical stack. Honestly, part of my mind is like, I understand it is illegal, but I can't believe that the Mets haven't done this multiple times over long periods of time just because of how crazy they are. It's like there's a rule of two. It's like, yeah, but you're evil. Who would pay attention to that rule, even if it would bite them in the ass at some later date, right? Scott Poe says, it's always flattering as a player when the DM makes a thing or person from your backstory specifically. Always go with it. Hell yes. In these games, listen, the idea of yes anding does not have a period at the end of it. Yeah, yeah. Dead man's like, yeah, that's why it's illegal. Yeah, because it will bite you in the ass, right? Breaking. I was making fun of the rule of two from Star Wars, and I make fun of it in a very sarcastic way because I'm like, if you're a dark side wielder and you're evil, why would you bother listening to that rule? And of course, the rule's existence because it will bite you in the ass. That doesn't stop people from doing things that are illegal in any way, shape, or form, no matter how dangerous it is to themselves and others. So the yes anding, right? Yes and does not have a period at the end. And what I mean by that is Game Master comes up with some rando NPC bartender, right? PC gets off Starship, goes to the local tavern, wants to collect some information. Player character goes, "Oh, it's a great time to insert something from my background." PC says, "Hey, that bartender seems familiar to me, like somebody from my past." Game Master goes, "Here's your yes stand." It sure is. They're wearing a medallion, a medal from their war period on the lapel of their jacket, and you recognize it from the same squad, but they don't recognize you because you're in a different morph, right? That's where you yes and then the PC yes ands and goes, yeah, this person was from my squad, but I don't remember them. A bartender? They were like a killer when I knew them. They were like a badass. I didn't think they'd become a bartender. And then this is how you yes and. It's listen, when it comes to acting, this is an improv rule where you add to a story, but you do not delete what is there. Although there is the idea that you are not supposed to make what someone else creates invalid, there is a way to make it invalid and still make it part of the story. The word I used was, oh, I can't believe they'd be a bartender. I remembered them as being a badass, is basically saying, you know what? I remembered something different than what you just said in your improv, right? So the game master may think, oh, the bartender might be one of their loved ones, but the player character doesn't invalidate it, but instead says, you know what? I remember this individual as a badass, and I didn't really like them that much. And so that's where conflict comes in. So we got the personal, now we got the conflict. Something that I think wasn't really portrayed very well in Altered Carbon that will have a significant impact in these transhuman games, and that is time. A lot can happen over time. Give something 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, 100 years. Whole economies, whole cultures rise and fall. Harry, you can attest to this. I'm picking on you because you're the only one older than I am here. Music. I remember 33s, 45s, 8 tracks, cassette tapes, CDs, and download digital music, individual songs, which we do have that, and now we have play random playlists. All of that has come and basically peaked and gone away within my own lifetime. I'm only 50 years old, right? So how many things can pass by in a particular lifetime? How long someone holds on to a grudge or hatred or a desire? Does that make them? Does it make someone callous for holding on to a grudge over 85 years of time? 78? Whatever, 78 years young there, dude. Does it make someone callous to hold on to a grudge for 78 years? Or does it make them apathetic if they fell in love with someone, but after a 207-year period of time, they were just like, I could do without them? You know what I mean? Personal interaction in these games can get quite a bit complicated. And if each player character has, let's say, give the game master 3 NPCs they can play with, like Scott Poe said, yeah. Yeah, Dead Man's like, unreliable narrator, ahoy! Yeah. And Harry brings up Dark Matter. I don't know how many people have watched that show, but Dark Matter had a clone that appeared anywhere. Yep. And some of these things can be kind of little, can be very easy. You want to drop a hint and get your players involved, make it personal, right? Oh, there were 78 albums. That's right. 78s, 45s, and 33s. I forgot about that. My fault. Ooh, remember the EP? Remember the concept album? Yeah. Yeah, back in my day. French toast. Anyway, so Scott Poe says Palpatine tried to sidestep the two guy rule by constantly offing and upgrading his apprentice until he got too ballsy and put his charisma up against family. Yeah. See, bad guys like to break the rules too. Bad guys always break the rules, and it comes to bite them in the ass. And we can do that in these games as well. Someone tries to copy, capture, and fork the mind of a PC. And how easy is that to happen in the Altered Carbon or Eclipse phase, right? Every time a player character, especially if they dark cast from Ceres in a belt out to a hab orbiting around Uranus, right? When listen, every time a player character goes to sleep and wakes up from having their cortical stack, they have no idea what's going on in the background. Just because you ego cast or dark cast away from your area, that doesn't mean your copy isn't left there. Can we go to Star Trek? Star Trek and Riker. Remember, he gets beamed back to the ship during some kind of interference, but come to find out that a copy of Riker was left on the planet and no one knew it, and the Enterprise just left. Who's to say that doesn't happen to one of the player characters? And what a great excuse to have an adversary or an NPC in the player character's background who's literally a copy of the PC. And which person does the PC play? Okay, do they play the person who got cast away and they went from Ceres over to a hab orbiting Uranus, or do they think they've been left behind and they never got cast off at all? And if their player character gets I don't know, dumped out in space, or their cortical stack gets crushed by a hammer, maybe they get to play their old self, who's pissed off that they got left there and that their new self is out there, or whatever happens, right? Yeah, Harry says encourage interactions better than kick down the doors. Kill the monster, rescue said damsel, get a treasure. Yeah, encourage those interactions. And you know what? What a great way to encourage the interactions in the first place. I mean, how many of us in a game? Oh, that was Thomas Riker. I forgot Rikert's. I couldn't remember Rikert's names. One was Thomas, and I forget the other one. in the next generation. But yeah, they brought that character back. It was Will and Thomas Riker, the two copies, right? It was, well, Will Riker was the main, and Thomas was the one that was demoted because he never increased in rank. He's all pissed off and stuff. Yeah. Dead Man's like Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny. Yeah. Scott Poe, surely the Nurse Joy and cop characters in Pokemon are all clone, right? Yep. Yep. Who knows? And remember, talking about all this stuff, their bodies, the bodies of the PCs that they remember are one thing and the mind behind them is something else. Do they, over a long period of time, do these individuals remember what happened? Or another concept is old habits, new beginnings. Okay, so the background of Eclipse phase is that the Earth has fallen, and there was all kinds of conflict and war, lots of terrible things. People probably backstabbed each other for any number of reasons. They did things that they normally wouldn't do unless pushed into an apocalyptic situation, and then they leave Earth and they go on to greener pastures, or so they think. So, in a post-apocalyptic world, do you remember the old or do you start brand new? Do you remember, when a person goes, listen, I know I stole your lottery ticket to get off of Earth, but I'm really sorry about it. Do you go, yeah, it's okay. I was left on ice and tortured and put in a synth morph and treated like second class citizen, but yeah, you're fine. I don't mind that you stole my ticket. What's the television show Lost in Space, the newer one on Netflix, right? The family, there's a fictional environment where the people on Earth want to leave, and the mom lies to and connives to get her son, who failed the test, to be picked as the people who are going to get put onto the Jupiters and sent off into space on the ship that's going to Alpha Centauri. I think it's called the Resolve. And so maybe maybe one of the player characters lied and stole somebody else's pass. Maybe the player character is a person of extreme renown on Earth, maybe an actor, entertainer, someone of notoriety, maybe some kind of television personality, an influencer, and they get out into space. And when they get out into space, they're like, you're a nobody. And they end up becoming someone that, they looked down upon. Do they hold on to that? Does what happens when a very rich, arrogant person who treats people like scum in our modern day ends up having those positions flipped in the future, when that person is now some kind of indentured servant, and someone who was treated like put under the boot of this person is now in control? What will they do that? Yep. Yeah, Jason's so underrated. Unfortunately, season 3 will be the last. Yeah, that's a the Lost in Space show is better than it needed to be, right? It's got a lot in there, especially including the environment. They do a lot with that, and I'm just like, I'm loving it so much. I'm embracing it. That show, I have embraced that show. I watched all the seasons, so episodes. I mean, so now that we know where we can go with the personal and stuff, now we've got some mechanics, right? Yeah, I agree with you, Jay. It is amazing what they did on that show to tell a story. It is a YA show, but it's much better than that. It's much better. Zayfoy Beeblebrox. Yeah, it is Zayfoy Beeblebrox could pull off the stolen lottery ticket marooned on Torture Planet apology. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so sorry. Yeah, yeah. Hey, dude, I rolled a crit with my charisma persuasion check or deception check. It's okay, right? Yeah, no, I was just tortured in an overclocked VR for a couple thousand years, but nah, it's fine. It's fine. Just as long as you apologize. Give me that towel. Harry says, perhaps I should give Altered Carbon a chance. The I would say if if you are into the show, I would give the show a chance. I definitely would give the show. It's got concepts in it. The first season, I think, is a step ahead of the second season, but I would see both of them because the concepts in it are pretty amazing, pretty amazing. And whether you think the acting and the money that he put in it is amazing or not, the concepts are awesome. And so, in talking about the mechanics of it, both Altered Carbon and Eclipse Phase, while yes, you can ignore these rules, they do have sanity rules. They have mental stress rules. And just like Call of Cthulhu, there is a chance that re-sleeving, torture, seeing things, any kind of psychological dissonance can affect your mind, including there's something called a reinstantiating. And if you reinstance with a copy of yourself, so for example, you're on Mars, you need to have a business meeting on Luna. So you cast a fork of yourself to Luna while you're still on Mars. The fork makes a business meeting and comes back. You are merging two separate simultaneous memories together back into one individual, one ego, one psychological being. And the dissonance there can cause psychological harm, just as it is, for example, in our own lives, if we are not twins of each other, but you see yourself doing things of yourself, or even the fact that you know that there are copies of yourself out there being used or mistreated or enslaved, or that you yourself hates you out there and thinks like you and acts like you and maybe is even having interactions with people you know without your knowledge while you've been on ice or while you're away on a mission. That can cause some kind of psychological harm as well. Not to mention the fact that while it is kind of a cool idea to go on a suicide mission and have someone blow your brains out and then wake back up again, because your stack wasn't blown out, you may wake up with the memory of that thing happening over and over again. And unlike our own memories today, our own memories are fragile, they are mutable, they are cloudy. Our own memories are not things that are reliable in any way, shape, or form. Because of technology, actually, our memories are perfect now. So, yes, you can relive the pain, the fear, and the emotion that you felt when that railgun got put to the side of your temple. And I don't know, the bad guy or your loved one or a jealous person or maybe a copy of yourself went and blew your brains out. And then you wake back up again 17 months later from cold storage after Firewall finally realized that your stack was gone and they were hoping that you'd show up, but you were out of radio contact, and so on and so forth, right? You start weaving this intricate story, and that's where it comes from. Now, Harry says, if there's anything larger than my ego on this ship, I want to hunt it down and shot. Yeah, might be like a file copy stamped on PCs. Yes, we might discuss. We'll talk about egos maybe in another episode. But yes, it might be possible that PC wakes up, player character wakes up, goes, "Oh, I'm feeling good," and then realizes that the authorities go after them because they're a copy, and there is a code of some, like either a digital code that's projected or something like that that shows that they are the copy. I can imagine that in any civilized society that they would put a copy stamp every time you fork yourself to do something, with a maybe a 20, like there might even be a timer onto it. You have 24 hours to make a fork, because people fork themselves all the time. I know it sounds dirty. Fork me, I'll fork you. You know what I mean? You better, back the truck up. What? Fork me? Jader, what's going on there? By the way, all thanks to Jader7777 for making this Discord server a possibility. I have not forgotten that. Jader says, do memory and feelings really work like that? If I had a perfect memory, would it be just like viewing a movie? Because I've felt very differently about a movie I've seen multiple times over the years. And that's kind of a weird, complicated thing in these games. I mean, not just in these games, but thinking about transhumanism, right? It's I'm with you there, dude. Like I've felt differently about, like you said, a movie at, say, if I watched it at age 12 than I did at age 17, and then I watched it at age 27, and then at age 37, and then 47, and I've seen the same things and felt different ways every single time. But if I have a cortical stack that records everything, is it recording my memory of it, or is it recording the exact event of it? And that difference, who knows? Maybe there is, I would say maybe both are happening at the same time. If you everything you see and hear is being recorded onto this backup brain you have, sorry, backup brain you have in the back of your head, is it recording it through your is it recording it practically, meaning like only through your senses, or is it recording it through the filter of your life, so that if you watched two movies of you seeing the same movie, would it be seen and felt differently by age 17 and age 37? I don't know. I don't know. That's a really that's you voiced something there, sir. That is a yeah. Harry says like possible three event. I I it's complicated and it could be different for each person, depending on how their brains, uh, based on the noetics of the synergy between their brain and the technology, or it could be based on where they live or something. Deadman says Eclipse Phase says it happens as a movie being watched. So it's possible you could, I don't know. Okay, you get in a hover car accident. You get they get your stack. They wake you up, and then your own memories of the event might be different than the movie you're watching from the event, because that's a possibility too. Because the event, he says, Eclipse Face, Dead Man says Eclipse Face says it happens as a movie being watched. So you might recall an incident in a different way than you felt it, because if you watch it back from the movie, you're like, I was pissed off at that person, and then you watch it back and you go, they seem kind of scared. I don't think they did that to hurt me. I think somebody was influencing them, which is another way of having personal conflict. Which, thank you for reminding me, because I didn't write the note down, but I was going to write that down. Yeah, because Jader made the point that, like, does the computer record the feeling or just the external senses, and then you just reprocess it every time you view it, right? And the Tesla, and of course, Deadman says it's like watching a movie, in which case, like Tesla says, your life flashing before your eyes is an accident in your cortical stack backing your memories up. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And does it record the, like, your memories flashing before your eyes? Is that a quote unquote mistake from our psychology? And does the cortical stack actually record that mistake or not? I don't know. Jader's like, denial, the stages, right? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, and comedy. Yeah. But I know we're having some fun with it. And I love this idea, but really in the game sense, there is an actual drawback to being resleeved over and over again, to having terminal, to being resleeved just because of terminal incidences, right? Some people can resleeve because they choose to. Like, oh, you know what I'd like to do? I know we are both of genders that we're not attracted to each other, but we do want a relationship with each other. So why don't we just resleeve, since we want to be in an accepting relationship? How about each month one of us resleeves into a gender of the preferred from the other person, right? That's a possibility, and maybe that's something that's done each time. And so a person who re-sleeves or sleeves and then gets re-sleeved into the same bodies, like say a Nova Crab and a Splicer morph, maybe they're very used to it. For example, let's say a scientific hab out there on Pluto or Charon, and maybe there's like 12 scientists, but there's only like five morphs for them to use. And so they're normally they're mostly infomorphs, and they use the biomorphs for, say, the pleasurable parts, but the synthmorphs for the scientific development. They might be very used to doing it that way, right? As a matter of fact, it might be even possible that you get 12 people who no longer have their own, they don't identify with themselves physically. They only identify with the five morphs that they have together, because all 12 people have been using the same five morphs for a dozen years. And they may not even remember what they originally looked like. They're just using these utility morphs over and over again with each other. And they themselves there might be some personal connection with each other that doesn't have a physical component to it and cannot be described in what we would consider a physical manner. A people connected, but the definition of that connection hasn't existed yet. Scott Poe says, way more interesting if it captures both. What movie was that with the illegal VR trade that definitely captured emotion? Stranger Days? Strange Days, I think it was. Um, 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 wow. Trying to remember. The movie involved a killer who recorded people's murders, and you could feel their emotions, but he would put the recorder on them so they would feel his joy as he, like, basically sexually assaulted and murdered them. Harry says, more than likely, since memories are a chemical point of view, might change a great deal with the perceptions of said viewer. Although in the game, they do have black market sim stems, right? Simulated stimulation, meaning they there are strange days. There it is. Thank you very much, Dead Man. On the black market, there's legal and illegal market for these. So the legal one might be hang gliding, right? And you want to feel what it feels like to hang glide. And so an individual records themselves hang gliding, you plug it in, and then you just hang glide with them. Now there are, I would say, entertainers, performers who have the unique ability to have their emotions and their physical abilities recorded, so that you can plug yourself, say, into a Telemundo drama in 3D, and then you can become one of those actors, and you feel their emotions and their emotions and their desires, and maybe even their sexual interactions, and you feel what they're feeling temporarily while you're in it. So there has to be something like that. Holy Ghost of the Shell, Batman, you silly. Yeah, thank you, Scott. Scott says, "Say, DB, stay safe, super safe out there. Thank you for helping and keeping our country going." Yeah, I've got to. I'm doing a. I'm working a ton of hours. It's been 11, 12 hour days every day. It's pretty bad. Now, some people have been asking me, like, why am I doing it? I'm segueing here, but if you guys don't know, then I am a mail carrier here in Central Ohio. And if I didn't do it, I would feel guilty that it wasn't getting done, right? Like, I'm delivering probably 5 times as many medications as I used to. I'm going from maybe 20 meds a day to like 70 to 100. There are people who absolutely cannot get out to, the pharmacy. There are people who are ordering tons of products on, like, just whether it's canned goods, paper products, people's stuck in the house. They need to order things for their kids. What is it, Amazon Pantry? A lot of things are coming through, and they need that help. I don't care if they're ordering Pop Tarts or not. They need it for their own. They need it for their own sanity. So yeah, they need that kind of stuff. But anyway, guys, thank you very much. I know we can go on with this for hours and hours. Maybe we'll do an episode on like the difference between say egos and morphs. We're definitely going to do one on post scarcity. I think we've done one like that before, but not in this format. So I'm sure it was a couple years ago we did one on post scarcity crime. I think we could redo it because I have a new context for it. Listening to Review the Future, they came up with 14 different methods other than straight up cash in a post scarce society. I think I can add a 15th or more, 15th and 16th one to that. So anyway, guys, I want to thank you guys so much for allowing me to be me and do what I do. It's only possible because, well, it makes me look brilliant, and I mean, you guys make me look brilliant, and it is the kind of thing that I'm into. Just lastly, for those out there, if you really want to support long form content, especially an hour each day, Monday through Friday, and you're like stuck in the house and you really need something to listen to, or you think that someone else would benefit from open long form discussion, please like, share, subscribe, follow. What are some of the other? Get notified, hit the bell, what all that kind of stuff. All of that, all the interactions and everything it really does mean something, both to me psychologically, helps me get up in the morning and go, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. And then it also helps for the algorithms because then other people can find me. And it would be kind of cool to grow the channel just a little bit each day. So guys, thank you very much. Everyone out there, have a safe day yourselves. Please be careful. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Bye.